You're listening to the Fresh Hell podcast. Fresh Hell contains stories of a disturbing and often graphic nature and is intended for a mature audience. Please don't let your kids listen to this, or they might turn out like us.
Hi, I'm Annie from the US.
And I'm Johanna from Austria, and you're listening to your favorite international podcast. We are two online friends who never met in real life and who, one day in 2019, out of the blue decided, you know what the world really needs? Another true crime podcast hosted by two middle-aged women. And here we are, years and over 300 episodes later.
That's right. And before we start, we'd like to take just a moment to welcome our newest Patreon members. And they are Elizabeth Romaine, thank you, and also Jane, who are our newest macabre patrons. And also a huge thank you to Joshua Park, who is our newest murder tier patron. So we're looking forward to getting to know you.
Thank you so much.
Really, we really want to thank everyone who supports the show, whether you've been listening from the beginning or if you're brand new here. It really means the world to us that you spend your time with us each week. And to our Patreon members, we appreciate you more than you know. You keep this little independent podcast running. Your support pays for hosting, research material, archives, and lets us carve out the time it takes to bring you these big 3-part, 4-part, 5-part monsters we apparently can't help keep making. We love hanging out with you on Discord, sharing behind the scenes, trivia, cinema macabre episodes, and all the extra weirdness that just doesn't quite make it into the main feed. If you're enjoying the show and you'd like early access, bonus episodes, ad-free content, our Cinema Macabre series, and just a lovely little corner of the internet full of fellow Hellions, you can join us at patreon.com/Fresh Hell Podcast. We'd love to see you there. But most of all, we're just so grateful you're all here listening. Thank you for being the best community we could ever ask for. All right. Now it is time for part 2 of the H.H. Crippen story. Johanna, would you give us just the quickest of recaps?
My pleasure. Also have to say, now I'm terrified because a couple of people wrote messages to us saying, oh my God, I'm so glad you're covering my favorite murder story ever. And I'm like, oh no.
Oh no.
That's scary.
It's the most stressful.
All right, but we're doing our best. So, quick little refresher from last week. We met Dr. Hawley, Harvey Crippen, who was described as a polite, slightly awkward American homeopath who ended up living and working in London. And we met his wife, Belle Elmore, who was basically his complete opposite in every possible way. She was loud, social, ambitious, dramatic, and honestly, she kind of lived for the attention. She loved being out with her music hall friends, loved performing, even though she was rather unsuccessful and, according to some accounts, not extremely gifted. Their marriage, it was not great. By 1909, it was basically two people living parallel lives in the same house. Crippen trying to live an average, quiet life. Belle trying to be a star. And then there was Ethel Leneve, Crippen's young secretary, quiet and sweet and supportive, so again very much the opposite of Belle, at least in some ways. Then came that little get-together at the house in January of 1910. Belle entertaining her friends, drinks, laughs, gossip, and that was the last time anyone ever saw her. After that, she supposedly went to America, and I'm making air quotes here, because that's just what Crippen said. This is all according to Crippen. Except his story didn't make a whole lot of sense and kind of changed every time, at least a little bit, someone asked. And meanwhile, Ethel suddenly started wearing Belle's jewelry and some of her clothes, and she basically moved into the house. Belle friends were the ones who finally said, okay, you know what, something is very wrong here. And they went to Scotland Yard. And that's where we left you last week. Now, I also have some minor additions to last week because I had ordered a book titled The Trial of Hawley, Harvey, Crippen, and it's basically all trial transcripts. And it only arrived after we had recorded part 1, but I figured it would be okay because we're not yet at the trial, right? But this book also answered a question I had last week about the lodger situation. So, apparently the Crippens had a total of 4 lodgers in their house at 39 Hilldrop Crescent, which I have to admit is still kind of hard for me to believe because the house just doesn't look that big.
No. All at the same time, 4 lodgers feels like too many people for that house, yeah.
Yeah, right? Also, I have to say that the book was first published in 1920, and it's very much based on, the trials, the transcripts, the newspaper articles at the time. And these articles were very often not very kind to Belle. So we have to take everything with a bit of salt, or as Annie likes to say, arsenic.
That's right.
However, it still gave some interesting anecdotes about the characters and about their home life. So for example, Crippen is described, and this made me laugh a little bit because they say in the book, he's an, quote, unremarkable little man, end quote, who would let Belle decide everything in their private life, from home decor to his wardrobe. And Belle was described as being a little bit stingy when it came to necessities, like grocery shopping. But she was apparently rather foolish with money when it came to the luxuries she craved. This is a quote from the book. Quote, her friends describe Belle Elmore at this period as being of an exceptional liveliness. A loud, clear voice with a strong New York twang would have called attention to her presence wherever she was. But her whole appearance corresponded with the vivacity of her character. She is described as good-looking, with large dark eyes, raven black hair, always elaborately dressed and in the brightest colors. Her appearance was likened by one enthusiast to that of a bird of paradise. Strange paradise indeed, from which this poor painted bird had flown, or whither she was flying. Crippen was then the insignificant-looking little man he always remained, small and short and slight in stature, with a sandy mustache, prominent eyes that looked at you through gold-rimmed spectacles, and a large domed forehead. His role in the social life was that of a spectator. He was the silent member of the gay little companies that were entertained by him and the bird of paradise. He was always courteous, always hospitable, apparently contented to look on at and enjoy his wife's little social triumphs among her friends. Her clothes and her jewels were the recipients of a great deal of admiration, and Crippen paid for everything. He often would give her money or a piece of jewelry in the presence of her friends, and was regarded, not surely without justification, as an ideal husband worthy of the good fortune that had befallen him in becoming the proprietor and companion of the bird of paradise. End quote. I love the picture they are painting and the language they're using.
I do too.
Fantastic.
This is also a time, if anybody was confused about some of the terminology, at this time the word gay meant happy.
Yeah, exactly. The happy little company. It was also
a common name for girls and boys as a name and a nickname. It was a name. Yeah.
It's also discussed that Crippen himself was responsible of taking care of the lodgers, cleaning their rooms, bringing up the coal from the coal cellar, and all that before heading out to work, and that there were rumors of Belle having an affair with one of the lodgers. Quote, Crippen's home life, which could have been made happy with the means at their command, was not restful. Their Sunday was a strenuous day of unrest for a hard-working businessman. Early morning mass, boarders' breakfast to be prepared on their return, boots to clean, beds to make, crockery to wash, dinner to be cooked and served, and all this to be done without domestic on the assistance. The novelty of the boarders' society, which entails so much drudgery, soon wore off. Dr. Crippen soon objected to it. They left shortly afterwards, and the Crippens returned to their strange, solitary mode of living. There was no system in the household. Mrs. Crippen disliked fresh air and open windows. There was no regular house cleaning. It was done in spasms. The windows in all the rooms, including the basement, were rarely opened. They had 2 cats, which were never permitted to roam for fear they should fall victim to the shafts of
This is my
To
favorite.
the shafts of illicit love.
Fall victim to the shafts of illicit love.
At his wife's desire, Crippen built a cage in the garden for them to take the air. Oh, they were very kind of ahead of their time, no? With
the catio.
Catio.
Yes.
A catio, yeah.
Love it.
Only when they received were lights shown in the hall or living rooms. They lived practically in the kitchen, which was generally in a state of dirt and disorder. The basement, owing to want of ventilation, smelled earthy and unpleasant. A guest describes, I followed her into the kitchen one morning when she was busy. It was a warm, humid day and the grimy windows were all tightly closed. On the dresser was a heterogeneous mess consisting of dirty crockery, edibles, collars of the doctor's, false curls of her own, hairpins, brushes, letters, a gold jewel purse, and other articles. It reminded one of the contents of Mrs. Jellyby's cupboard in Dickens' Bleak House. End quote.
It's like how I keep house. It's like
It's very relatable,
my style
right?
of housekeeping is. There appears to have been a struggle. Not with the food stuff, though. That's nasty. So last week we left you with the fact that Belle had vanished and Crippen claimed she had passed away in California. So sad. Around this time, the Music Hall Ladies Guild began to receive information that just didn't match anything Crippen had been saying. One of their members contacted the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce to confirm the story about Belle dying in California. Their reply was short and very unhelpful for Crippen. No woman named Crippen had died there in March. There was a record of a man named Crippen who died in April, but that obviously was not Belle. I love the fact that you could call the Chamber of Commerce to find out if someone died there. That's wild. So this immediately raises alarms for several women in the guild who actually knew Cora well and didn't trust what Crippen was telling them. So Louise Smithson, she had known the Crippens for about 15 months, and she was one of the first people to voice her concerns. She had last seen Cora on January 26th at a guild meeting where Cora was in excellent health. She was cheerful, and she was her usual, very sociable self. Louise also ran into Crippen at a ball on the 20th of February and casually asked how Cora was doing. Crippen gave a vague answer about hearing from his wife, quote, somewhere up in the wilds of the mountains of California. And when she pressed him for more details, Crippen became brusque and told her it didn't matter because she was dead.
Another committee member, Melinda May, had known Cora for 2 years at that time. She had also seen her on 26th of January when she looked, in May's words, quote, quite healthy and well, beautiful and bonny, end quote. So when Cora failed to appear at the next meeting that took place on 2nd of February, Melinda went to check on her at 39 Hilldrop Crescent. Instead of Belle, she found Ethel Leneve at the door. And Ethel then handed her a stack of items. It was Cora's passbook, her paying book, her checkbook, a letter addressed to Melinda, and another letter for the guild committee. Both letters were signed Belle Elmore, but neither looked as if they were written in her handwriting. So the letter to Melinda read, quote, Dear Miss May, illness of a near relative has called me to America on only a few hours' notice. So I must ask you to bring my resignation as treasurer before the meeting today, so that a new treasurer can be elected at once. You will appreciate my haste when I tell you that I have not been to bed all night packing and getting ready to go. I shall hope to see you again a few months later, but cannot spare a moment to call on you before I go. I wish you everything nice till I return to London again. Now, goodbye, with love, hastily, yours, Belle Elmore, PPHHC. End quote. Now, the PPHHC means per procurationem, signed on behalf by HHC, so H.H. Crippen. And that was not reassuring.
No, nope, I don't like that one bit. That's a problem.
The letter to the committee said, quote, To the committee of the Music Hall Ladies Guild. Dear friends, please forgive me a hasty letter and any inconvenience I may cause you. But I have just had bad news of the illness of a near relative, and at only a few hours' notice, I am obliged to go to America. Under the circumstances, I cannot return for several months, and therefore beg you to accept this as a formal letter resigning from this date my honorary treasurership of the MHLG. I am enclosing the checkbook and deposit book for the immediate use of my successor, and to save any delay, I beg to suggest that you vote to suspend the usual rules of election and elect today a new honorary treasurer. I hope some months later to be with you again, and in the meantime wish the Guild every success and ask my good friends and pals to accept my sincere and loving wishes for their own personal welfare. Faithfully, Belle Elmore. End quote.
So neither the ladies of the Guild nor her other music hall friends believed any of this. So they decided to go to Scotland Yard and report their suspicions. And this is how Chief Inspector Walter Dew got involved. He was already well known inside the yard. He had joined the Metropolitan Police in 1882 when he was just 20. Starting as a constable before working his way up into the Criminal Investigation Department. He didn't have the dramatic flair of some detectives. He wasn't a swaggering Sherlock Holmes type. He was known for something more practical: persistence, a good memory, and a calm temperament. And, fun fact, well, you know us, unfun fact, very unfun, Dew had been involved in the Jack the Ripper investigation. He was not one of the lead detectives, but he did work in Whitechapel at the time, and he helped to investigate the murder of Mary Jane Kelly, the Ripper's final and most brutal canonical victim, in November of 1888. Dew later wrote that the scene was the most ghastly he had ever witnessed. It stayed with him his entire life. He said it changed how he viewed human cruelty, which is not hard to imagine. Yeah.
I mean, there's a photo. I guess everybody who's kind of into true crime knows that photo.
That's right. If you've never seen it and you don't like gore, do not search it, but you can easily search Mary Jane Kelly and see what we're talking about. After the Ripper years, Dew built a reputation as a steady, reliable investigator. He dealt with fraud, forgeries, jewel thieves. He was trustworthy, and he also had a strong sense of fairness. By 1910, when he was called to look into Belle Elmore's disappearance, Dew was a highly experienced chief inspector. His name is Dew, like dew on grass, D-E-W. So Belle's friends, they show up at Scotland Yard, and they tell the officers that Mrs. Crippen, their Belle, is missing. That Dr. Crippen had given them 3 different versions of what had happened to her, that Ethel Leneve, his secretary, was suddenly wearing her jewelry and living in Belle's home, and that none of this made any sense. The officers listened politely, asked a few questions, and made notes, but nobody seemed to be too alarmed. Missing wives were, unfortunately, just not that unusual. Still, the ladies were persistent, and they were promised that someone would look into it. More or less a week after some of Belle's friends had talked to the people at Scotland Yard, on the 8th of July, 1910, Chief Inspector Dew and a sergeant named Mitchell officially opened their inquiries. They started by speaking with Crippen, visiting him at his office. They sat down, and then Crippen did something unexpected. He immediately admitted he had lied.
Shocker. But no, he did not confess to killing his wife. But he said that Belle hadn't died in America after all. Nope, she had simply run off with another man from the music hall world, and he has no idea where she went. Later, in some sources, the mysterious lover would be referred to as Bruce Miller. Apparently, Belle really knew a music hall performer by that name, but we can't say with total confidence that Crippen gave Dew the name during his first conversation. It's very plausible, but not solidly documented. It could have come up in some later sources or completely made up. You know how newspaper worked back in the day. And today, sometimes. Now, why had Crippen lied to Belle's friends and told them that she had passed away? Well, he said it was out of embarrassment. He didn't want anyone to find out that his wife had left him and that she had run off with another man. Because remember, appearance and respectability meant everything. And then Crippen started to give Dew a written statement. And the way it came together is very odd, but also kind of mundane. Crippen would dictate part of it and then excuse himself to go see patients. Apparently, he was also knowledgeable in the art of pulling teeth. And then he'd return to continue dictating. And this whole ordeal went on for most of the day. Dew later said the whole thing took hours, broken up around Crippen's appointments. At lunchtime, the two of them even went out together. Really? They went to a Holborn restaurant like they were just two colleagues taking a break, lunch break or something like that. Later that day, Crippen accompanied Dew and Mitchell back to 39 Hilldrop Crescent, and he walked them through the house himself, and they went from the attic all the way down into the cellar, and nothing struck Dew as out of place. Everything kind of matched the story Crippen had just given him, and Dew later said that on 8th of July, after spending almost the entire day with Crippen, and after going through the whole house, he saw absolutely nothing that suggested anything more sinister than simply a wife who had left her husband.
So that explanation made sense to Chief Inspector Dew. There was nothing suspicious or immediately concerning, and everything looked as if this was nothing more than a rather embarrassing domestic mess. Definitely not a crime. Dew would later admit that Crippen's quiet, polite manner made him believable. But Belle's friends did not accept that. They kept inquiring and voicing their opinion that something did not add up. So, a few days later, still in the second week of July, he shows up once more at Crippen's office, but this time he was informed that Dr. Crippen had not been in for a few days. Now that was obviously sort of suspicious. Dew immediately went to Crippen's house. Everything was quiet. The blinds were drawn. No one answered the door. And when Dew finally got inside, he walked into every detective's nightmare. The people he needed to talk to were suddenly gone. Now that's when Dew knew that Belle's friends had been onto something, because something fishy was definitely going on. The police had to search the house properly now, and search they did for 3 days. And the truth, or at least part of it, was waiting for them in the cellar. On July 13th, Dew went back down into the cellar, this low, damp, kind of like Victorian, Edwardian cellar. And now come on, if you listen to this podcast, you can tell us, do good and nice things ever happen in the cellar? No, nothing good happens in the cellar. Not on this podcast, it doesn't.
But outside of the podcast too, do good things happen in cellars?
Yeah.
Like, are there any happy cellar stories? What?
Well, I think so. Sometimes they're storm shelters and they save people's lives.
Okay, that's true. Yes.
And also,
I give you that.
Well, cellars and basements, I guess a basement is like makeoverable and a cellar is not. Is that how we're sort of... Because sometimes people redo their basements and make them more living space, and they're wonderful.
Dew is down in the cellar. And this time he starts testing the brick floor with a metal poker. Didn't we have a metal poker in, was it the Bloody Benders? Where they used a metal poker? I have the feeling like metal poker cellar combination is kind of common in the Edwardian Victorian era.
There does seem to be a sort of, didn't it even just happen recently with the fireplace poker and the, what was it, the staircase? And they found it in the basement.
Right, yeah.
Or the garage.
True. So he's poking the brick floors, and most of the bricks were solid. They were fixed in place. But what was that? Was one of them slightly shifting when he poked it? So Dew worked a few more bricks loose the same way, and once he'd opened a small section of the floor, he fetched a shovel or a spade. And he didn't have to dig far. Just a few inches beneath the bricks, he hit something that wasn't dirt. And what he uncovered was a tightly packed mess of what looked like animal remains, at least at first. We all know, never a good thing to uncover in one of these stories. Because it wasn't, of course it wasn't. What Chief Inspector Dew had discovered were the remains of a human body. Basically, just the torso. The head was missing, the limbs were missing, the bones were gone, and so were the organs.
No, thank you. No one expects that in their basement, do you? That's
too many things missing.
Oh, so many things are missing. This is terrible.
Pretty soon, the examiners seemed to be sure, though, that the body part belonged to Cora, or Belle, judging from a piece of skin on the abdomen. And I wonder if it was because of a scar.
I can answer that, I think. It looks as though you're right, and it was indeed because of a scar. She had apparently previously had an operation of an ovarian removal, leaving a low abdominal scar. And I know this sounds wild, but I almost wish, we don't have like diagrams of any of this, do we?
I don't think so. There's a lot of photos and a lot of drawings, but I don't think of the torso. I didn't find anything yet. I'm gonna keep searching.
It's probably terrible regardless. It's interesting to me how they managed to cut the torso without any like identifiable genitalia or you know, organs, but then still managed to get this lower scar area. I can't even imagine how grisly a find this was.
It must have been horrible.
Awful.
And I think it was covered in quicklime, I suppose.
Ugh.
Because this is July. We're talking July, and she went missing end of January.
Yes.
So, of course, the fact that a body or part of a body was found in the Crippen house, the fact that the suspects were apparently on the run, sparked public interest, and the media went absolutely crazy. Also, not surprisingly, theories and speculations were abundant, and so many neighbors and people who might have been in loose contact with the Crippens tried to insert themselves. We know the kind, right? It always is like this, like, I sold them an apple one time, and I'm pretty sure this and this happened, this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So here are some excerpts from an article that was printed in the Times Herald on Friday, 15th of July 1910, page 1. Titled, Crippen Case Clue Leads Detectives to Coast Resorts. Abandon belief that missing doctor and typist have fled from England. Neighbor hears death struggle. Shopkeeper says shots were fired frequently. Singer's insurance investigated. Quote, This afternoon, the police made public the statement of the keeper of a shop adjoining the Crippen home on Hilldrop Crescent. This man declared that he often heard revolver shots in the Crippen house, and he had grown so accustomed to them that when 4 or 5 months ago he heard a woman piteously scream, "Oh don't," followed by revolver shots, he paid little heed. Do we really think that there were shots fired constantly? Sorry for interrupting, but
no, I'm wondering that as well. That seems so strange to me.
Yeah, that seems like this kind of person who just wants to talk to journalists and make up things.
Yeah.
The article continues. As this happened about the time the police believe Mrs. Crippen was killed, the shopkeeper believes Crippen shot his wife to death on that occasion. While it is possible that the struggle heard was the death fight of Belle Elmore, the police are making a search for other possible victims. The identity of the body not being absolutely established, it is possibly that of another victim. The police are endeavoring to trace the possible connection of the doings in the Crippen home with the disappearance of several women, and it is now believed by some of the investigators that the Crippen house will reveal a series of crimes as shocking as the Jack the Ripper cases of 20 years ago. Sorry for interrupting again, but isn't it wild to be like reading a newspaper article and they're like, oh, this, you remember this Jack the Ripper case from 20 years ago?
No. That's not that long ago.
Yeah. The police have arranged with the coroner to have the inquest held tomorrow, when it is expected that the chemical analysis made by Dr. Pepper...
Sorry.
I can't.
This article is the gift that keeps on giving. It's terrible.
I'm so sorry. I don't want to laugh because it's terrible, but... Made by Dr. Pepper, the famous criminologist, will show that Mrs. Crippen was killed by poison. Her physician husband is well versed in toxicology. The frightful mutilation and dissection of the body was an afterthought, designed merely to facilitate the decomposing action of the quicklime in which the body was interred. There you go, quicklime.
Quicklime.
Many of the larger bones were removed from the body, for they would not soon disintegrate in the bed of quicklime. It is said today that the reason for the continued search being made through the house is that the police are confident they will find these bones hidden somewhere about the premises. The police today resumed their search of the Hilldrop Crescent house. Detectives trained to such work this morning began an examination of all the floors and walls, tapping and at times demolishing, under the supervision of Superintendent Forrest and Sir Melville Macnaughton, Chief of the Criminal Investigation Department of Scotland Yard. The motive for the murder, according to the police, is a baffling problem. What could possibly have happened? At the variance with the poison theory is the belief expressed in some quarters that the murderer bent down Mrs. Crippen in a sudden fit of rage. The correctness of this view would still further carry out the analogy between the Crippen case and the Charlton murder, in which Porter Charlton, the frail American youth, beat his beautiful wife to death in their Lake Como villa and threw her body in a trunk into the lake. The fact that the woman's wardrobe worth fully $5,000, I think it says dollars, not pounds.
Yeah, I think so.
At a conservative estimate, and her jewelry were left undisturbed after her death, the police say is regarded as significant. Miss Leneve was seen afterwards wearing some of the finery, including a sealskin sack. A sealskin sack and diamonds. Is sack something like in German we have Sakko, which is like a blazer?
It must be like a jacket of some kind, I would guess. I never heard of the other murder that they mentioned, though.
Now we have to look it up.
I know.
Charlton murder, Lake Como.
Yeah.
Take a mental picture. The article continues. The police are making a close investigation to ascertain what life insurance was carried on Mrs. Crippen. It is understood that large policies were carried. Inquiry at the headquarters of the Music Hall Guild developed that the funds of the guild of which the victim was treasurer are intact. An aspect of the case that has attracted much attention on the part of the authorities is the report that Miss Leneve, who had been Crippen's stenographer for several years, in spite of his wife's pleas for her discharge, married Crippen after Belle Elmo's disappearance. If she did, she is his third wife. Her marital status would have great bearing on her ability to testify regarding the case. End quote. Of course, the examiners pretty quickly figured out that the victim had been poisoned. When the pathologists began testing the remains, which was mostly skin, muscle, and fatty matter, they found unmistakable traces of hyoscine hydrobromide,
which is also known as scopolamine, which is, if you've ever seen people with a little patch behind their ear on a cruise for seasickness, that is scopolamine. And I also take an antispasmodic that's derived from hyoscine.
As you said, also known as scopolamine, or, best name ever, devil's breath. And it's derived from plants like henbane and deadly nightshade. And it was used in the Edwardian era as a sedative and antispasmodic, but, in the wrong dose, it could absolutely stop the heart. And Crippen, surprise, surprise, had recently purchased scopolamine. He had bought 5 grains of hyoscine from a chemist on New Oxford Street in January, so right before Belle disappeared. And for context, apparently, if I understood correctly, 5 grains was enough to kill an elephant. And when asked why he needed such an unusual drug in that quantity, Crippen said it was for his wife's nerves. I'm sure he could calm his wife's nerves with that forever. What the examiners found in the remains was consistent with someone who had been given a large dose, causing deep sedation and then respiratory collapse. 2 days after Belle's remains were found, so on 15th of July 1910, Scotland Yard issued a warrant for Hawley, Harvey, Crippen and Ethel Leneve. But where were they?
Okay, so the alarm went up quickly. Dew contacted the Metropolitan Police offices, and by the afternoon, Scotland Yard had circulated the first internal bulletin. Dr. Hawley, Harvey, Crippen, and Ethel Neve were missing, believed to have fled England. Their descriptions and photographs were sent to police forces in every British port. Du's instinct was that they were already off British soil, and there was one overwhelmingly logical place for them to run: America. Crippen was American by birth. He still held connections there. And in 1910, if you wanted to vanish into a place big enough and chaotic enough to swallow you whole, New York was the obvious choice. People arrived there every day with nothing but a name and a story. Some of the stories were true, most weren't. So Du and the Yard focused immediately on the transatlantic ships. Every steamship line with departures for North America, Cunard, White Star, Allen Line, Canadian Pacific, they were all contacted by Scotland Yard. The directors and captains were told to keep an eye out for a short, mild American doctor in his late 40s, traveling with a much younger woman who might be dressed plainly, or perhaps even disguised. Ethel was small and slight enough that she could plausibly pass as younger, especially if her hair was hidden under a hat. Du flagged this as a possibility early on. The next step was to monitor arrivals in New York. Scotland Yard contacted the NYPD, the Pinkerton Detective Agency, and immigration officers at Ellis Island, sending over physical descriptions of Crippen and Ethel and asking that a close watch be kept on all arriving steamers. With wireless telegraphy still in its infancy, much of this communication was done by cable, telegram, and letter, slower than today, but still fast enough for Du's purposes. The frustrating part was that nobody knew when Crippen and Ethel had left. Du only knew that the house was empty when he returned. They might have departed that morning, the night before, or even 2 days earlier. And in 1910, steamships didn't all depart from London. Many left from Liverpool, Southampton, or even Hull. Others departed from European ports: Boulogne, Calais, Antwerp, Rotterdam. Du had to assume Crippen wasn't foolish enough to stroll onto a ship at Tilbury Docks in broad daylight. He had to think like a man who believed he was smarter than everyone else. Meanwhile, as Du was trying to work out where the pair had gone, Crippen and Ethel were already well on their way out of England. After Crippen was questioned, that very first time, Crippen and his mistress were scared to death. They were certain the police knew more than they had let on, and that the arrest was imminent. The evidence suggests that they crossed the Channel and made their way to Belgium, choosing to avoid the most obvious British ports.
Smart.
The continent offered anonymity and a slight head start. Once in Antwerp, a major departure point for travel to Canada, they booked themselves onto a North Atlantic steamer. Crippen used the name John Robinson, a father traveling with his teenage son. The teenage son was, of course, Ethel. Her hair cut short, her figure hidden under loose-fitting clothes, and a cap pulled low. The disguise wasn't perfect, but in 1910, a clean-shaven man escorting a slightly built boy did not look strange at all. People didn't stare. This was exactly what Crippen was counting on. Crippen planned this escape carefully. He had shaved his mustache, he had changed his clothing, he had coached Ethel to call him father in front of the other passengers. He had purchased steerage tickets. He'd even researched the sailing schedules enough to choose a ship that didn't go to New York, which everyone assumed he would choose. But instead, he went to Canada. The steamship they boarded, the SS Montrose, was not luxurious by any means. It was a fairly ordinary vessel operated by the Canadian Pacific Line, with a mix of tourists, immigrants, families, and businessmen.
I think they just had second and third class, no first class tickets, as far as I remember. No first class passengers on the Montrose. But I could be wrong. But I think it was this kind of really just for...
Trying to get there, not luxuriously, necessarily.
Yeah.
Ethel, or Master Robinson, as she was now officially listed, stayed mostly out of sight. She ate meals quietly, trying to avoid large crowds. She spent hours in their cabin. She kept her head down. Crippen, on the other hand, tried very hard to act like a man who had absolutely nothing on his conscience. He chatted politely with officers. He took short walks on deck when he thought no one would pay attention. He read newspapers, and he tried to appear calm, but he wasn't. Passengers later remembered that he seemed anxious, almost ill, as if he were expecting something at any moment, but none of them recognized him. The newspapers hadn't yet printed the first round of sensational headlines. The world didn't know it was supposed to be looking for him.
I think he's having the better strategy. I think the I'm talking to everybody and act as if I have nothing to hide is way more successful than just, trying to be not suspicious, which makes you so much more suspicious. You know what I mean?
Don't be suspicious. I do. I really do. Yeah. I think he really did think things through. This would be a great episode if I almost got away with it.
That's true. Yeah.
Scotland Yard was chasing shadows across Europe. Dew received conflicting reports. A man matching Crippen's description had been spotted in Dover, then Boulogne, then Brussels. Ethel had allegedly been seen boarding a train in Calais. None of these reports were accurate, but Dew had to check each and every single one. Circulars were sent to Liverpool, Glasgow, Belfast, Southampton, you name it, just in case Crippen had made a last-minute dash to a northern port. In New York, police officers stood on the docks as every major liner arrived. The Lusitania, the Mauretania, the Oceanic, the Kaiser Wilhelm der Große.
That means the great.
That's right, the great. That's funny that gross is great. Große. It sounds like it's just Große. They checked manifests, they examined steerage lists. Ugh, that's exhausting work. I do it with ancestry stuff all the time. They questioned passengers whose descriptions didn't quite match but were close enough to warrant a second look. At Ellis Island, immigration officers were briefed to look not just for Crippen and Leneve, but to look for both of them possibly arriving in disguise. Like they didn't have anything else to do.
As you said, who has the energy for all of that? Well, they got paid for it, so what can you do?
That's it.
And it's not just, they really had to go there, check everything, look at all the lists. It's nothing that you can tell them, just email it over to the office. I gotta go through it.
Yeah, I can't just doom scroll from my comfy chair all day.
Yeah, so they checked all that and they went there and they did all of that. And yet, as the days passed, no Crippen, no Ethel, nothing. And at this point, I guess Dew began to fear that he had actually miscalculated. Maybe they had gone to South Africa. Maybe they had gone east, not west. Maybe they'd chosen a cargo ship. There were just too many possibilities.
Yeah, there really were just too many. It's too many possibilities. It's too many bones missing.
It's a big world out there.
There are a lot of problems with this story.
Ironically, the one place the pair were not expected to appear was on a ship to Canada. Canada was a less glamorous destination, and many British travelers still thought of it in terms of rough landscapes and unforgiving winters. But Crippen chose it precisely because it was not New York, and he thought it would buy him time. Also, it was part of the Commonwealth. So wouldn't it be... You'd think they would think of Canada first.
That's right.
If they are hunting for a British fugitive, right?
I would have thought so, yeah.
Yeah. So the Montrose chugged across the Atlantic, its engine thumping day and night, and at this point they were almost home free. The ship's captain had a Marconi room. Yeah, but nothing had happened yet to trigger any suspicion. And as far as the Montrose's officers were concerned, the Robinsons were just another pair of passengers heading to a new life. And back in London, the pressure was building. Dew knew they had fled. He knew they could be anywhere by now. He knew they were likely on a ship. He just didn't know which one. And every day that passed made it more likely that the pair would just walk off a gangplank somewhere, be it in North America, South America, or any other continent outside of Europe, and just simply, poof, vanish into the crowd or the vastness of a new continent, never to be seen or heard of again. You didn't yet know, but the next stage of the chase, the part that would make history actually, was about to begin. But for now, Crippen and Ethel were still comfortably hidden, unnoticed, traveling quietly across the Atlantic under false names with no idea that their attempt at a clean escape was already starting to fail. Still, they might have made it. They truly might have gotten away with it all. The only problem was the captain. Captain Henry George Kendall was not the sort of man you could hide things from. He wasn't suspicious by nature, but he was very observant in the way that people become when they've spent years responsible for a ship full of strangers. He knew the look of a first-time traveler, he knew the look of a nervous immigrant, he knew the look of someone who wished he were invisible. And from the moment the Robinsons boarded in Antwerp, Kendall felt something wasn't quite right. And I'm sure it was like, you know this feeling when you can't put your finger on it? But you know something is, there's something, but I don't know what yet. The boy walked too carefully. The father seemed both protective and very uneasy. They were inseparable. They were not just close, but glued together, often holding hands. And it was just odd, but not yet alarming. Ships saw every type of family dynamic imaginable, and Kendall noticed it and kind of filed it away. But a couple of days later, the London newspaper arrived. And this was a normal part of ship's life. Tenders brought out bundles of mail and newspapers at the last European contact point. In this case, they probably picked up fresh London newspapers from the pilot boat off the coast of Kent or somewhere around there. This was just routine. Usually the captain skimmed the headlines for weather patterns and political developments and pretty much anything that might affect the voyage. This time, Kendall picked up the paper and saw something very different. A photograph. A man with a mustache. And the headline mentioned a doctor and a disappearance and a search, or let's call it a hunt. And he saw a name, Hawley, Harvey, Crippen. And then the captain probably went for his routine afternoon walk on deck, and as he walked, he maybe found himself staring as discreetly as possible at the Robinsons. And the resemblance wasn't perfect because Crippen in the photograph wore a mustache. Mr. Robinson did not. But faces don't change that much, even when they are shaved. And the eyes, they were the same. By now, Kendall's suspicion had a shape, a name, and a problem. He was 5 days out at sea with a possible murderer and his accomplice. He didn't think they were really dangerous in a violent sense. Crippen looked like a man who apologized to chairs when he bumped into them.
I'm sorry, but I have done that myself more than once, and I don't know how offended to be here. It's fine. Mannequins, chairs. I've apologized to all manner of inanimate objects.
I would apologize to a mannequin. I think it's kind of instinct thing.
It is. Yeah. And then you follow through with, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were a real person. And then you look at the people looking at you and you're like, who am I even still talking to anymore? I'll see myself out. Oh.
So yeah, but even if they were not violent, a murder is a murder. And the captain had a responsibility to the law. And Kendall could have waited until they reached Canada and he could have notified authorities upon docking at Quebec. But that was kind of risky, right? Ships were chaos during disembarkation. People slipped off unnoticed all the time. Crippen had already escaped once and Kendall didn't want to give him the chance again. And Kendall had something that detectives in London didn't yet fully appreciate. A wireless telegraph. The brand new Marconi installation capable of sending messages through the air across enormous distances.
Yeah, we've talked about the Titanic so many times over the years that you probably already know this part. But the reason so many Titanic survivors were rescued is because the ship had one of the newest pieces of technology in the world, the Marconi wireless telegraph. That wireless room, with its exhausted operators and its constant sparking and buzzing, saved hundreds of lives. Without it, the rescue ships would never have known that Titanic was in trouble. Her distress call, CQD, and then that was followed by an SOS sent out in this way, because the wireless set was powerful enough to shout across the Atlantic in stuttering bursts of Morse code. This is also a famous bit of Cape Cod history and trivia, as the very first ever two-way wireless message was sent from Marconi Station in South Wellfleet on January 18th, 1903, and those messages from Titanic to Carpathia were relayed through that Wellfleet station. A lot of people who visit the Cape probably know Marconi Beach without ever realizing who Marconi was or what the significance is. In 1910, during the Crippen case, all of this technology was still pretty much magic, brand spanking new, and absolutely not something any criminal in their right mind would have worried about. It's like the first murders that were taking place when DNA became a thing, right? Nobody could even conceive that would be what got them.
Yeah.
Ships that had it were considered modern, almost futuristic.
I read that at the time, I think there were just 60 ships who had it. And I think, but I have to check that up, just by skimming through Kendall's life. I think he was working with Marconi, and that was probably why this ship had a Marconi room.
So how did the Marconi work? The Marconi wireless telegraph, it wasn't like a telephone. There was no voice. Instead, it sent out bursts of radio waves as little electric pulses, which were then translated into Morse code, dots and dashes, and relayed from ship to ship or ship to shore, depending on range and weather. Messages could travel for hundreds of miles, sometimes more, sometimes less. It depended on atmospheric conditions, operator skill, and just how much electricity you were willing to risk pumping through the system without blowing it up. And in 1910, it was still considered something between a scientific miracle and a novelty. Most passengers did not understand how any of this worked and how the operators weren't just electrocuting themselves. But for the police, that wireless changed everything. When Captain Kendall became suspicious of the Robinsons, the quiet father with the shaved mustache, and the timid teenage boy who looked suspiciously like a grown woman, he went to his wireless operator and dictated a message straight to the heart of Scotland Yard. He didn't have to wait until the ship reached Quebec. He simply sent a message into the air. It crackled through the headphones, tapped out, ... etc., and leapt from the Montrose to shore stations, and from shore stations straight to London. So this was the first time in history that a wireless telegraph was used to track and capture a fugitive. The world didn't know it yet, but Crippen had just become the test case that proved wireless wasn't just a cutting-edge maritime convenience. It was usable in so many parts of everyday life, including law enforcement. But at that moment, on the Montrose, somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic, Crippen knew none of this. He did not know that Captain Kendall had read the London newspapers. He did not know that Kendall was watching him, and he had absolutely no idea that a message carrying his fake name, John Robinson, had already been launched into the night sky, traveling straight for Scotland Yard. Right now, as far as Crippen was concerned, he was safe. He was also wrong, because somewhere back in London, the wireless message was about to land on Walter Dew's desk. And what did the message say? Quote, "Have strong suspicions that Crippen, London cellar murder and apprentice, are among saloon passengers. Stop. Mustache taken off. Stop. Growing beard. Stop. Accomplice dressed as a boy. Stop. Voice, manner, and build, undoubtedly, a girl. Stop." End quote. Dew must have been so excited.
I think, can you imagine, he's at his desk or wherever he got his telegraph and he's like, gotcha.
Gotcha. Meanwhile,
Gotcha.
Crippen's he's like, all right, it's 2:00 now. Bingo starts at 3. And then I've got a massage at 5:00 before I dress for dinner.
I think this is the perfect moment to stop for this week. And next week, we'll tell you the rest.
That's right. That's how
Just
we
like
roll.
that.
That's how we sail.
Yeah. All right. Something good?
I do have something good. I have just returned from a cruise my husband won last year in a poker tournament. I don't know if you all remembered around this time last year, we went on this cruise. My husband won a seat in this year's tournament, so we just got off that ship. And our friends Dawn and Tam came, and they got the cabin next to us. So that was nice because Paul was off playing poker all the time. And this time I had some company for, it was just really nice. And we met some great new friends on the trip, which is always a joy. And at the end, we ended our trip with a night in St. Augustine, where we went to the Capybara Cafe. And that is my suggestion for all of you today. I really recommend it. I'll be telling you all more about my trip in Patreon and in future something goods. But so the Capybara Cafe is part of Noah's Ark, I believe is the name of it, Animal Sanctuary. And they have all kinds of critters there. They have capybaras, who are lovely. There's a skunk. We also got to meet one of my favorites. It was a screaming hairy armadillo, is the technical term for this type of armadillo. And his name was Panini, and he was so cute.
I love the photo.
And the skunk was rescued when it was a baby. She was found caught in a glue trap. Glue traps are the devil, y'all. Don't ever use poison or glue traps, please.
So bad for the bird population as well.
Awful for literally
insects,
no glue
everything.
traps,
Yeah.
no poison. It's ugh. Fortunately, she survived, but she lost part of her tail, and she was so little that she became pretty quickly like a pet as she was being rehabbed. And skunks actually make great pets. I was just really impressed with this place. I was impressed with the way they educate the public. I was very impressed with their policies regarding the way they treat the animals in their care and how you are allowed to interact with them. They definitely put these animals first. The animals are very clearly well taken care of and happy and loved. They've got a really big menagerie, I think, at the sort of the main base. And it's a rotating, so the capybaras are always there, but it's different capybaras depending on who wants to get in the car and go that day. They never forced anywhere if they don't want to go. And they rotate out the smaller animals too. Like there's a possum, there's a raccoon, there's all kinds of creatures.
Wait, they just offer the capybaras to get in a car, and if they don't want to go, they just don't want to go.
That's right.
I'm off today. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, they have them in like a special transport or whatever.
Yeah. No,
as they
got
get
what you
older,
mean.
apparently they're less interested, but the babies love it. And they climb all over you, and they're really sweet and social, and they make guinea pig noises, and they are every single bit as adorable as you thought they would be. Their hair is very bristly hair, but the skunk, some of the softest fur I've ever felt in my life. She is a beautiful little sweetheart. Her name was Flower.
Oh, like the ghost.
Yes. And like Bambi.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you're in the St. Augustine area, go check out the Capybara Cafe. Make a reservation. Go check them out. Tell them I said hi. I gave them my card because I felt like the vibe was right. I'm like, you guys are into weird animals. I enjoy weird animals. So hopefully if they're listening, thanks again, Capybara Cafe. That really made my month. How about you?
My something good is so stupid and vain compared to your something good about cute animals, but it's another hair story.
No, yours is so good.
You all remember me crying for days about not being able to bleach my hair anymore, and I'm not a blonde anymore, and I have to go to my stupid, boring, natural hair color, which I now love. It's like, it looks so good. I mean, I don't want to, I don't want to sound like, but it really, I think it looks good with my eye color and everything.
It looks great.
I have to go to the hairdresser to, I've been wearing it in like a glavy bob or like a long bob kind of thing. But if you saw White Lotus season 3 with Leslie Bibb, and I love that woman, I adore her. I've been following her because I'm such a fan of Sam Rockwell, and he's her partner, her boyfriend. And she got this adorable, she calls it the cunty little bob, cut for White Lotus. And she looks so good with it. It looks amazing, better than when she had the long hair.
I agree.
And then I was like, should I cut my hair in a cunty little bob?
Yes.
And I asked the question on my private Instagram. And most people were like, yeah, go for it. And a couple of people were like, no, don't do it. But I did it, and I cut it in a cunty little bob. And I love it. It feels so good, so freeing. I just can recommend.
It looks so good. It looks so good.
And that's my very stupid, vain, superficial
That's not
story.
stupid or vain. It's funny because when I was on this cruise, I was saying it might be time to cut my hair into like a longer bob. I don't even know if a bob is the right word, but it's just too long.
I think you have so much hair, you need it a little bit longer. You really need like over your shoulder, this kind of thing.
Has to be, because otherwise it's too fluffy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it.
I love your hair. Wait till everyone sees it. I'm getting mine done on Thursday. Yay. So by the time this comes out, I might also have a long bob. A lob, blob, blob.
Blob, blob.
Blob. What was the lawyer's name on Arrested Development? We just talked about this. Bob, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Blob. Anyway, I have so much to tell you guys about this trip, but it's going to be drips and drabs over ages because otherwise it gets annoying.
And we always have to save something good.
We do. I'll be like, hey, remember that trip I took 6 months ago? Let me tell you about this thing we did. Trust me, I've got lots of those stories coming. Oh, all right. If you enjoyed this episode or any of our other episodes, please take a moment to rate, review, and follow Fresh Hell wherever you listen. It helps other Hellions find the show.
And remember, you can always leave comments on Spotify or under the YouTube videos, the uploads we do there. And we read all of them.
We really do. If you'd like early access, ad-free episodes, and our Cinema Macabre series, or if you just want to support the show and hang out with an amazing community, including us, you can join us over on Patreon at patreon.com/Fresh Hell Podcast. We only have one episode left of The Girlfriend to talk about.
This week, and you're going to see the last episode of The Girlfriend. Then we're going to think of something for December. And then in January, we're going to decide on something new. I just watched, did anybody else watch the Hulu show about Amanda Knox? That was really good, but I don't know.
Is there a new one or the old one?
A dramatization, not the documentary from Netflix that they did.
Oh no, I haven't.
It's really good.
How was it?
It's really good. I enjoyed it. I binged it in one night. And I usually don't watch too much true crime lately just for the show, but this was kind of... I remember this is going too far. We're going to talk about all of this in another episode. But yeah, that would be interesting or whatever. We're going to find something.
All right.
Also, we're on Facebook. You can find us under Fresh Hell Murder. Otherwise, you're going to find the mommy podcast.
That's right.
You can email us at freshhellpodcast@gmail.com. You'll find more info, our P.O. box, the email address, the link to the merch store, the link to our socials on our website, freshhellpodcast.com. And as always, thank you so much for listening and for supporting the show. You are really the best community we could hope for. Please tell your pets we said hi, hug them, cuddle them, treat them kindly, be kind to your fellow human being, and also sometimes be kind to yourself.
That's right. And try to remember to love the unloved. And as Churchill once very famously said, if you're going through hell,
keep going. Tschüss.
Bye.